All right, here we are, Sports Bit, betting insight today. Pauly and Teddy, Thursday, September 7th. The NFL is here. Midweek line movers coming up. Big game breakdown. The 4 top games in college on Saturday. Georgia-Notre Dame, Oklahoma-Ohio State, Stanford and USC, and Auburn and Clemson. We'll get to that coming up in big game breakdown. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books in a second. Talked to Tony Miller this morning at the Golden Nugget. He's at 9.5 with the Patriots. Could go to 10. It's going to be a correlated parlay with the public, Patriots, and the over. Not to mention, amazing but true, since 2007, in the regular season, Tom Brady has lost once to an AFC opponent.
Yeah, what's he got, 50-1 straight up? But, of course, the point spread is a great equalizer. That being said, what we like to do every week during the NFL season here on SportsBit, either Wednesday or Thursday, we go through where the midweek line movers have been. On Monday's show, we're going to talk about where the initial money came. And you better be watching Monday's show every day throughout football season. You're going to get information here that you're not going to find from most other sources. But when it comes to the midweek line movers, you want to know where the wise guy, what are the wise guys thinking? What are the public thinking? And certainly, New England's been a popular bet all week long. They got popped yesterday, went from -8 right through 8.5 up to 9. As you talked about, 9.5 for the Nugget. A number of shops have moved to 9.5 already. No surprise here if this number closes -10 or higher.
Yes. Also, well, here came the Bills money because Taylor is going to play now Sunday and get the start. They're up to 9. And how about a couple of guys at the Westgate who think the Raiders could be laying 17 against the Jets in week 2?
I mean, look, the money coming in against the Jets is, I'm not going to say unprecedented, but it's pretty high. I mean, the anti-Jets sentiment among the wise guy community. The Jets opened, what were they? We're total at 5 wins, 5.5 wins. Now they're down to 3 at some spots. And obviously, money rolling in on Buffalo. And this has nothing to do with the Bills. I mean, certainly Taylor, the fact that Tyrod Taylor's supposed to play has something to do with the Bills. But this isn't pro-Bills money. This is anti-Jets money. The books already struggling with what they're going to do to get somebody to bet on the New York Jets this season.
Well, the professionals will be on the Bears here because, it's been nothing but Atlanta on the teasers. But the Super Bowl loser has been horrible week 1 on the road, ATS. That's something that goes back 15 years. And I think the Bears were Atlanta was down to 6.5 at the South Point this morning.
Yeah, there are a handful of books that have already moved to 6.5. Mostly still at 7 out there. I don't think this line is going to last. So we've seen the wise guys' support for Chicago start trickling in. I think we'll see more. If you like the Bears at +7, I'd bet them sooner rather than later.
And here comes the move here. I wish I grabbed 42. Shame on me. Jags, Texans under down to 39.5, 39 in some spots. It's Bortles against Savage. And this total was 47.5, down to 42 now. But this is a 7-point move, and it should be. Again, our stats guy thinks Tolzien is the worst backup in the NFL. He gets to start now Sunday. Rams are laying 4.
Yeah, I mean, with the Jags, Texans under, certainly that total down to 39 in a lot of spots. We've seen steady under money all week, and you nailed it. I mean, Bortles versus Savage against 2 top defenses. That's a problem for points being scored. The market's recognizing that. And Indy right now, you can make a case if you're power ranking NFL teams right now. You can make a case for the Colts without Andrew Luck. Maybe as number 30 or 31. Rams -4 starting to pop up. And I would expect to see more LA Rams money come in between now and Sunday.
Wow, how about that? Bad beats. Look at this. Phillies Mets over 8. It was 6-3 in the 6th. The game's over. Oh, no, here comes the rain, though. Refund.
That's brutal. I mean, for whatever reason, and I understand the reason. The reason is because you don't want to confuse people with rules. But when you're over cashes and then it's, no action, the game got rained out, it's 6-3 in the 6th. Your over's in, but the game gets suspended by rain. And even worse, you have 2 teams playing that are combined 52 games under 500. Guess what? The umps aren't waiting out this rain delay. Nobody's waiting out this rain delay. It was a matchup of top teams. Maybe they waited out for a while. It didn't happen with the Phillies and Mets. That's a bad beat if you had over 8 last night.
Yes, no doubt. Here's a couple of bad bets that didn't have a chance. Look at the steam on this game. Colorado opened 140, closed 190 at home to the Giants. They were 9-0 at home against the Giants. Cueto pitched well. They never had a chance in that one. The Rockies lost 11-3. And what are you doing? As we say on this show all the time, bet on streaks, not against them. Dodgers opened 155, closed 180. The Diamondbacks have won 13 in a row, while the Dodgers have lost 11-12.
Yeah, I know. Let's talk about Johnny Cueto for a minute, because Cueto's fresh, and he pitched real well in Colorado. And this Rockies team, I mean, they're frittering away their big edge in the wild card race. They only have a 2-game lead over St. Louis right now. Colorado's choking a little bit, and that 50-cent move for the Rockies. The books got to keep all of that. And when you talk about the Dodgers, I mean, the Dodgers got bet up to -180 last night. You know, This is a team that's 1-11 in their last 12 games. The other team, as you mentioned, has won 13 in a row, and the money's pouring in on LA. I mean, what did the Dodgers do? They got a fluky double from Chris Taylor to start the game. They got a ground, it was a ground ball that deflected off of Jake Lamb into foul territory. Came around to score the only Dodgers run. They didn't get another run or a hit against the Arizona bullpen. The entire bullpen, Fernando Rodney, a guy we like to make fun of, guess what? He's up to 36 saves now for the D-backs, and bad bet on the Dodgers. There's no other way around it.
Yep, one more. Steam on the Rays was Snell. Opened 150, closed 180. He had nothing. Twins won 10-6. And one bad for the books. The Cubs-Pirates under 8 down to 7. How about that? 1-0 final as Quintana went against Cole. Cubs get a run in the top of the 9th to win.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Quintana and Cole were trading zeros for the first 8 innings of that ball game. When the under gets steamed from 8 down to 7, and it's 0-0 going into the 9th, bettors got it right. Not a good result for the house.
Up next, big game breakdowns. 4 huge games in college football. And we'll start with Auburn and Clemson in prime time on SportsBit. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
We're back. SportsBit Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy, time for big game breakdown. Always sponsored and powered by Bet Online. Exceptional customer service, strong promotions, and every type of wager you're looking for out there. Visit sportsbookreview.com bonus page for the best betonline.com offers. Auburn, Clemson, Saturday night. Clemson at home, 5.5, 54 the total. A battle of 2 good teams here, and maybe could be 2 top defenses. Auburn only returns 3 senior starters, and Clemson only 2 on defense. Stidham, the transfer from Baylor, probably their best quarterback since Cam Newton. Let's go back to the game last week against Georgia Southern. He had a strip sack, fumble return for a touchdown, also threw an interception. The offense was okay, laying a big number in the 41-7 win. Fascinating game because you have Clemson, who everyone's talking about, as they played a nobody and ran over Kent State. But first of all, what'd you think of the Auburn offense, Teddy?
Well, it's going to be a work in progress. When we think about Auburn, okay, over the last 3 years, Auburn has proven capable of playing with anybody in the SEC. And they've done it despite the fact that their quarterback play has been abysmal. I mean, LSU abysmal. Consistently. They haven't had a good quarterback since Cam Newton. All the talk about the Stidham is that he is going to be not the next Cam Newton, but a capable quarterback. Now, obviously, there were issues in the opener. Gus Malzahn, quote, yeah, there was some communication that we've got to get cleaned up. There's no doubt. Because the negative plays, obviously, we can't get behind the chains against these guys like we did last year. They got after us pretty good on first down and put us in some negative situations. We can't have that this week. Of course, you remember last year, Clemson, 4 sacks, 14 tackles for loss. They won 19-13 at Auburn. Remember, they did not cover the number as 8.5-point favorites in that ball game. But with Auburn, with an interception, with a strip sack that returned for a TD, with an offense that allowed 3 sacks and 8 tackles for loss against Georgia Southern, there's a concern here, Pauly. There is a concern. But on the other hand, I don't know that there's a ton of value on the Clemson side after beating a true bottom feeder on national TV last week.
Yep. They opened up by blowing out Kent State. Kelly Bryant was 16 of 22, 236 throwing and 76 yards rushing. the development made easier by the fact that they have good wide receivers and there's 4 starters back on the O-line. Here's Bryant on learning under Watson, quote, he never got too high or got too low. He played within the game because throughout the course of the game, it's always a long game. It's not just one play or a quarter of a half. It's 4 quarters, so he put 4 quarters together. Okay, enough of that quote. Then you have Sweeney, who said he had an excellent presence to him, and he continued doing what he's doing all fall camp. That Bryant made great decisions, made the throws we needed, made plays with his legs. That was good to see in his first start because, again, it's different on game day. You know, the next step is, can he consistently perform? And the challenge becomes much, much greater. The decisions are still the same, but can he consistently perform like we need him decision-wise, so the margin for error gets less. There's too many people pumping their tires because they beat a no-name team. They look great, so what? They're supposed to. Now a big step up. It helps the big time that they're at home. But you think there's something here with Auburn in all your years doing this, you will remind people, don't get carried away with what a team does against a cupcake in week 1.
Well, sure. I mean, when you want to talk about handicapping theory 101, you start right here. Beware the team that looked way too good against the true bottom feeder last week. And that's, of course, Clemson. They're on national TV. They played a Kent squad that is a legitimate MAC bottom feeder, and they destroyed them. And everyone saw it, and everyone's like, oh, Clemson's fine. Who needs Deshaun Watson? Look at all the talent they have, all of which is true. You know, Clemson is certainly a legitimately elite team. You can make an argument for powering them right there with Alabama at the very top of all of college football. But from a value standpoint, there's concern here. Handicapping theory 102 or 101A, you want to look for quality teams as underdogs, teams that can play defense, teams that are capable of winning the game outright. Those teams are teams like Auburn. So I'm still a little hesitant to take the points here, Pauly. Maybe it's because of all the Auburn hype. Maybe it's because of the fact that they were 8-5, 7-6, 8-5 over the last 3 years, and now they're being priced as a top 10 team. But when you look at Auburn's personnel, in each of the last couple seasons, all they've been short is a quarterback. This year they have one. Maybe the Auburn Tigers be the live dog in this one.
Very good. And one of the toughest places to play in all of college football. Game number 2, live odds bet online. Shame on college football, by the way. These are great games. There shouldn't be the 4 marquee games shouldn't be at the same time. One of these should have been in the afternoon. In any event, Georgia at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is down to 4, 57.5. That's a lot of respect for Georgia and also Fromm, because the freshman takes over now that Eason's out, as he has the ligament damage in his knee after the win against App State. So Fromm came in, the true freshman. He was 10 of 15 for 143 and a touchdown. He looked good. The defense was great against a frisky App State team. But how about this? Georgia fans ready to go. They're ready to take over and get those tickets in South Bend.
Yeah, exactly. There's a whole contingent of Bulldogs fans going to be at this game. I don't know if that negates something of what we see from Notre Dame's home field. Not one of the greatest home field edges in college football anyway, but it's certainly a situation where the Bulldogs are likely to have more crowd support than many teams in this venue. Now, you talk about Jake Fromm. I mean, you really want to be aware with this kid. You know, is it a freshman rushed into action because the starter got hurt? Well, yeah. But all the talk out of camp this summer was that Fromm was playing as well as Eason. Here's a quote from Kirby Smart. There's not been a moment that's been too big for Jake Fromm since he's been a little kid. He's always been that way. So the reports are this kid has a good head on his shoulders and is not going to be intimidated by the environment. And of course, not going to hurt for Fromm in his first collegiate start to have a pretty good running back duo, Chubb and Sony Michael. You know, what do we got? The best running back tandem in the country. 183 yards, 3 touchdowns last week. We can expect a steady diet of handing the football off in this one.
As I mentioned earlier, they shut down App State. That was 31-0 in the fourth quarter before they finally scored. App State also kicked a field goal, 31-7 with like a minute left. That was weird. But they didn't do it. Only had 12 first downs, and there were 2 short drives after some interceptions as well. So the defense was terrific. Now, what do we do here? Wimbush and Notre Dame looked terrific, but it was against Temple, who lost their quarterback to the NFL Walker and also lost their head coach Rule to Baylor. But he had 12 carries for 106 yards, and he was 17 of 30 for 184. with 2 touchdowns. Brian Kelly on Brandon Wimbush. Quote, I thought for a guy starting for the first time, he provided some excitement and energy to the offense. I think everybody that watched him can see the tools he has, the ability to run, throw the football. He's tough. He got hit today, but he got back up. End quote. Which should you be getting hit that much when you play Temple?
Well, it's a whole different scenario here because we're talking about a very different caliber of defense that Brandon Wimbush is going to be playing this week. Last week, the running game worked just fine, and he was able to move out of the pocket and create some big plays with his feet. Against Georgia, might not be so easy for this young quarterback to have the ground game that supports his ability to throw the football downfield. But when you talk about, the Georgia defense, what about the Notre Dame defense? Remember, Brian Van Gorders was let go as defense coordinator in the offseason. Mike Elko came over from Wake Forest. Elko guided the Wake Forest defense to number 10 in the nation in takeaways last year. Notre Dame was 104 in that category. And Wake Forest isn't known for having a ton of athletic defenders. The key, maybe simplicity of the scheme. Look at the quote from the former safety, Notre Dame's former safety, Max Redfield, about former coordinator Brian Van Gorder's system. Quote, I would say being consistently successful in that scheme is more difficult than learning Chinese. That's not the case with Mike Elko's system. This year, Notre Dame's defense looked pretty good in their open.
And that is a money quote there. Excellent. We finish with Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Stanford-USC plus the play of the day on SportsBet. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBet, we roll on. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Big game breakdown. This is how we do it every Thursday and Friday during the football season. Next up, Oklahoma and Ohio State in prime time. Bet online number, Ohio State 7.5, 64.5 the total. A woodshed game last year in Norman. 45-24 Buckeyes. Mayfield held the lowest completion percentage of the season. He was 17-32, fewest yards per pass, 2 interceptions. One was a pick six, and the other turned into a touchdown on the next play. Baker Mayfield on last year's loss, quote, they just beat us. They flat out were better than us. I watched the film, no question about it. We didn't play like we should have. They lose Pirine, Mixon, and Westbrook to the NFL, although they return all 5 starters back from the offensive line.
And in my mind, when you have your quarterback back and you have 102 career starts returning on the offensive line at a school like Oklahoma, I don't worry one bit about losing that level of skill and talent. Yeah, they lost a ton of it. Westbrook, Mixon, and Samaj. We're talking about 3 elite level talents. Guess what? The next guys are just getting ready to step up. It's the offensive line and the quarterback that are the difference makers for the Oklahoma Sooners, not the individual skill position talent players. And Oklahoma, pretty good in both those departments, OL and QB, heading into Columbus.
So Ohio State did whatever they wanted in the second half against Indiana on that Thursday night game. They trailed at the half. Barrett threw for 304 yards. J.K. Dobbins had 181, 6.2 yards per carry. Was this Ohio State just gassed Indiana? Because why was Indiana, as a 21-point favorite, throwing and going hurry up? You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to shorten the game when you're a big dog, not extend it.
Yeah. Of course, who's 21-point dogs? In Ohio State, 21-point favorite. But that's the style that Indiana wants to play. And obviously, it did not work out particularly well for them in the second half against Ohio State. Let's talk about this Buckeyes defense, because last year, there was literally was one of the youngest defenses in the country when they won at Oklahoma. Now, that defense has matured. Their defensive line is elite. And when you're ranking defenses, both all 3 units for Ohio State, legitimately top 10 defensive line, linebackers, and secondary. But I'm fascinated by this matchup between the elite Oklahoma offensive line and the elite Ohio State defensive line. The battle in the trenches here is going to be something worth watching, one of the best battles in the trenches this season. So it's a Buckeyes defense that super young last year. This year came out of the gate, played a lousy first half against Indiana and then really turned it on after halftime. But the offense struggled early against Indiana. They couldn't get the faster tempo going because they couldn't make first downs to stay on the field. That obviously changed after halftime. And Oklahoma's strength, well, it's the quarterback and the offensive line. I do have my concerns about that Sooners defense. Fascinating game here. But from a betting standpoint, lean over. Haven't gotten to the window with it yet, Pauly, and don't know that I will.
Okay. The last game, Stanford-USC. I think you know what we're going to do here. Bet online number 6.5, 55 the total, 27-10 last year. Stanford won lane 7, although that was Max Brown, who was a bust for USC and transferred out. Darnold only played late off the bench. Shaw, pretty good numbers against USC. Stanford just reloads too. They lose McCaffrey, top 10 pick, but they got Bryce Love, who put up big numbers last year when he got the chance, and he opened with 180 yards on only 13 carries against Rice in the blowout, August 26th.
Well, that's just it. There's all this concern about Christian McCaffrey. And again, elite talent, but it's not like there's nobody behind him that's ready to step in and take advantage of his opportunity. This kid, Bryce Love, is special. I'm telling you, think McCaffrey's special. Love is special as well. And the graphic shows it very clearly. He averaged, and again, he was playing garbage time mostly last year. But when you're looking at a guy who outrushed at a higher yards per rush average and a higher yards per catch average than the first-round NFL draft choice, well, it tells you that you have some talent on hand. But we got to talk about Stanford as an underdog and against USC. In the David Shaw era, Stanford 4-2 against the Trojans. And both losses by exactly 3 points. When you're talking about Stanford as an underdog under David Shaw, how about this? 8-2, that's not just 8 ATS. That's straight up. Stanford consistently winning outright as an underdog. They've stepped up in class very well in recent seasons.
Now, USC didn't play well against Western Michigan. I know Todd McShay said Darnold looked good. After you watch the film, he didn't play as bad as what it looked like. I know he had 2 interceptions. He didn't throw a touchdown. They were down 7 in the third quarter, and then Jones took over a 37-yard touchdown run. They had the pick 6 as well. What concerns me is what happened in the trenches. Western Michigan ran for 263 yards, most of it between the tackles. Clay Helton, head coach, quote, "I'm happy to have that type of experience. I'm happy it wasn't easy. It was a hard-fought game. I know there's a lot of progress that needs to be made, and very quickly." That's his quote there. Now, what do you think here? Stanford's had their number. There's 7s available. Is it too much? It'll probably go up because the public's going to take USC.
I don't know that it goes up any more than this. And there's 6s out there too. This line bouncing between 6, 6.5, and 7. If you like Stanford and you see a 7, I would grab it. But you talk about the fact that Western Michigan just ran for 263 yards against USC, and most of that came between the tackles, which is exactly what Stanford wants to do. And if the Cardinal control this game in the trenches, USC is going to struggle to put together a margin in this contest. And we talked about the success of Stanford as an underdog. We talk about the success of Stanford in the trenches. We talk about the success of Stanford against USC. Look, there is some concern. The Trojans do have the speed on the outside to test the perimeter of that Stanford defense. But the fact is, the last time USC beat Stanford by more than a field goal was 2008. That was when Jim Harbaugh was in his second year on the farm. He hadn't even made a reputation yet. He hadn't done diddly squat. The Cardinal went 5-7 that year. In 9 meetings since then, all Stanford straight up wins or losses by 3 or less. What makes this year different, Pauly? My gut reaction? Nothing. And that's why we're going to use this one now that it's play of the day time.
There it is. Money time play of the day. Betting number 387. 7s are available. Grab it. If you're late to the party, buy it up to 7. Key number. Take Stanford plus the points. Shaw not bothered by the underdog roll with 8 outright wins in 10 tries. There's the picture. Underdogs, what's the big deal? He doesn't care. Although don't go conservative when you get in a red zone shot. That's been your big issue as head coach of Stanford. We're back tomorrow with the NFL and to recap New England and Kansas City on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.